Samantha Josephson grew up in Robbinsville, New Jersey. After graduating high school in 2015, she enrolled at the University of South Carolina. She was friendly and kind, and loved to have fun, which made her well-liked by the people she met throughout her busy life. She had a vibrant personality, which helped give her the energy to remain on top of her studies, as well as successfully take on numerous other commitments. She was a member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority and had studied abroad in Barcelona. In addition to all of her commitments at school, Samantha worked part-time at the Liberty Tap Room and made time to focus on her relationships with her friends and family, who were extremely important to her. In early 2019, 21-year-old Samantha was preparing to graduate with a degree in political science. Samantha planned to return to the Northeast, closer to her family, after her graduation in May. She had been accepted to law school at both Rutgers in New Jersey and Drexel University in Philadelphia, and planned to attend Drexel, where she had been offered a full scholarship. Her goal was to specialize in international law. Samantha spent the evening of March 28, 2019, out with her friends in Columbia's Five Points district. She became separated from her group of friends, who last saw her shortly after 1 a.m. on March 29th at a bar near the 700 block of Hardin Street. Samantha ordered an Uber to drive her home. She never arrived there. Samantha was scheduled to work later in the morning of the 29th, and her boss was surprised when she did not arrive on time. He instead was met with a phone call from one of Samantha's friends, who was asking if she had arrived at the restaurant. Samantha's friends and roommates spent the morning going to establishments near where she was last seen, showing her picture and asking to see surveillance footage. When they could not locate her despite hours of searching, they reported her missing to the police at approximately 1:30 in the afternoon. Around 3:30 p.m., just as the missing persons investigation was getting underway, turkey hunters in rural Clarendon County discovered a woman's body along a remote dirt road, approximately 65 miles away from where Samantha had last been seen. They called the sheriff's department to report what they had found. Based on the description of the body and the clothes found with it, authorities believed it was Samantha Josephson, a suspicion which was later confirmed. The pathologist who examined Samantha's body would later testify that she had sustained approximately 120 stab wounds, and that at some point he had stopped counting them, as there were so many wounds that the exact higher number would not add anything to the report. The injuries were throughout her head, arms, chest, leg, foot, and back. Several of the wounds that had penetrated her brain and neck would have been fatal on their own. Several of her injuries indicated that she had fought back against her killer. The pathologist also testified that it was difficult to obtain a blood sample from the body for routine testing, as just over a tablespoon of blood was left in it. More than 500 people attended a vigil held in Samantha's memory on March 31st. More than a dozen people who were important to her, including her father and boyfriend, spoke at the vigil. Samantha's body was returned to her family in New Jersey, and her funeral, attended by nearly 1,000 mourners, was held at Congregation Beth Chaim in Princeton Junction on April 3rd. Her body was later interred at Perrinville Jewish Cemetery. Samantha was posthumously awarded her degree in political science by the University of South Carolina in May. The investigation into Samantha's murder was greatly helped by digital records and surveillance footage. A check of Samantha's bank records showed that several unsuccessful attempts to use Samantha's debit card to make withdrawals were made at 2 ATMs in Columbia and Sumter, South Carolina, both along Sumter Highway, in the hours after her murder. Surveillance videos showed someone making these attempts, which were unsuccessful because they did not have the correct PIN. However, this person covered their face, so it could not be seen in any of the footage. Surveillance footage from the area where Samantha was last seen was more helpful in developing a theory as to what had happened to her once she was separated from her friends, and provided a major lead. The footage showed Samantha standing outside and ordering an Uber. Eventually, a black Chevrolet Impala pulled up in a parking spot next to her. Samantha got into the back seat of the Impala just after 2 a.m. Authorities believe Samantha thought the car was the Uber she had ordered to drive her home. It was not. Footage also showed the Impala circling the block where Samantha had been waiting on the curb, prior to it pulling up next to her. This means the driver may have seen her as she was waiting. Samantha had initially approached a different vehicle to see if it was her Uber, while the Impala had been behind it. After seeing Samantha realize her mistake and go back onto the curb, the Impala's driver pulled into the parking spot next to her, and Samantha got into the car. Police therefore began looking for the black Impala. Around 3 a.m. on March 30th, just 25 hours after Samantha was seen getting into the Impala, a Columbia police officer observed a vehicle consistent with the one Samantha had been seen getting into, driving just a few blocks away from the 5 Points district. He pulled the car over, and the driver was initially cooperative. However, when the officer mentioned that his vehicle matched the description of a suspect vehicle, the driver fled on foot. After a short foot chase, the driver was apprehended. He was 24-year-old Nathaniel David Rowland. Inside Rowland's vehicle, police found a container of bleach, germicidal wipes, and window cleaner. They also found a large amount of blood and Samantha Josephson's cell phone. The child safety locks on the car were activated, meaning the back doors could only be opened from the outside. This led authorities to theorize that the child locks had been used to prevent Samantha from escaping the car when she realized she was not in her Uber. After the blood was found to belong to Samantha, Rowland was formally charged with her kidnapping and murder. Forensic evidence continued to mount against Rowland as the investigation progressed. Samantha's footprint was found on the rear passenger window of his vehicle. Samantha's DNA was found under Rowland's fingernails. Her DNA was also found in numerous locations throughout his Impala, on the heel of his sock, and on a bandana confirmed to be his because his own DNA was also present on it. Samantha's blood was on cleaning supplies later found in Rowland's girlfriend's home, and on 2 sections, the serrated blade and the inner handle, on a double-bladed multi-tool found in the trash behind the home. One of Samantha's hairs was also found on the multi-tool. Investigators believed this multi-tool was the murder weapon because it would cause wounds consistent with the parallel wounds found on Samantha's body. Maria Howard, Rowland's girlfriend at the time Samantha was killed, and the resident of the home where much of the evidence against Rowland was found, would later testify she had seen Rowland cleaning that multi-tool later in the day of Samantha's murder. Also found in the trash, along with the multi-tool, were bedsheets, towels, cleaning wipes, toilet paper, a jacket, and a pair of pants, all with Samantha's blood on them. When Rowland went to trial for Samantha's murder in July of 2021, his now ex-girlfriend Maria testified against him. During her extensive time on the stand, she provided important information about Rowland's actions and locations, both before and after the time Samantha had been killed. On March 28, 2019, the evening when Samantha had begun her time in the 5 Points district with her friends, Rowland had come over to Maria's home and was going to spend the night there. They went to bed, but Maria woke up in the middle of the night to find that Rowland was gone. Rowland enjoyed going out to the 5 Points district and had previously gone out to do so after Maria had fallen asleep, so she was not necessarily alarmed to find that he was gone when she awoke. However, Maria was upset he left that night because he was supposed to give her a ride to her job at McDonald's in the morning for her 7 a.m. shift, and she hated being late for work. Furthermore, she had given Rowland her shirt from her uniform to wash and dry, and she had left her hat from her uniform under the rear window of his car the day before, so she could not simply call someone else for a ride to get her to work if he did not return in time. Maria could not recall the exact time Rowland returned to her home on the morning of March 29, 2019, only that it was after she was supposed to already be at work. Upset that he had made her late, she went out to talk to him and ask for her work shirt. He did not have it, so he left her home and returned with it 10 minutes later. When he gave her the shirt, it was wet, and when she looked for her hat in his car, it was gone. She asked Rowland where it was, and he told her it was in the country. She was confused as to why it was out in the country, and when she asked him why it was there, he told her it was because it had blood on it. She asked him why it had blood on it, and he told her to mind her own business. Maria got into the car so Rowland could drive her to work, but he had to stop for gas and to buy some items on the way. It was then that Maria noticed there was blood in the back seat. A sheet had been put down over it, but it had not been placed perfectly, so some of the blood was still visible. Maria asked Rowland about the blood, and he again told her to mind her own business. Rowland dropped Maria off at McDonald's at 7:45, 45 minutes after her shift was supposed to start. Rowland was also supposed to come back to pick up Maria at the end of her shift, which she failed to do, so Maria found another ride home. When she arrived back at her house, she was angry, banging on the door, but Rowland's reaction was just one of shock at seeing her. Maria went inside to take a shower, and when she was finished, she saw Rowland outside cleaning his car. When she went outside, she could smell bleach. Rowland obviously did not thoroughly clean the vehicle, as blood would still be visible inside of it when he was apprehended by police, and texts sent between Maria and Rowland that day show them discussing blood that had gotten on Maria's daughter's shoe after she rode in the vehicle later in the day. Maria and Rowland drove to her mother's house that day, with Maria driving Rowland's car. During the drive, Rowland put on blue surgical gloves and began cleaning his multi-tool with wipes. That evening, 2 of Rowland's friends came to Maria's home to meet up with him, and they left to go out to the 5 Points district for the evening. Maria asked Rowland what he was doing, going out to such a popular area when he had blood in his car. He told her to mind her own business. After Rowland left, Maria was watching the news when a segment about Samantha Josephson was aired, and the surveillance footage of her getting into a black Impala was shown. Maria recognized the car as Rowland's, and the events of the day suddenly made sense to her. She did not immediately act on this realization, however. Maria testified that she did not call the police immediately after seeing the blood in Rowland's car or seeing the news segment, because she feared for her own life and that of her young daughter, should she act out against Rowland. He was taken into custody just a few hours after the news segment aired. Rowland and Samantha's cell phones were also important pieces of evidence at his trial. GPS data shows Samantha and Rowland's cell phones traveling in the same direction until Samantha's phone was turned off, and Rowland's phone continuing on to the area where Samantha's body was eventually found. Rowland was familiar with this area, as it was not far from a home owned by his family, where he had recently resided. Samantha's cell phone was not turned on again until later in the morning on March 29th, when it was in downtown Columbia, and then traveled to Monticello Road. Surveillance footage shows a man dressed in dark clothes coming into a cell phone store on that road. According to the store's owner, the man, whom he identified as Rowland, drove up in a black Impala and wanted to sell a phone. The phone was unlocked, and the owner saw a picture on it of a young woman he would later say appeared to be Samantha Josephson. The man wanted $300 for the phone, but the store only offered him $125, so the man left the store with the phone, which would later be located by police in Rowland's vehicle. A list had been found in Rowland's car reading duct tape, tape her whole body, gloves, all black, flip phone, gasoline, matches, with the word matches crossed out. A handwriting expert compared the handwriting on the list to a known handwriting sample from Rowland and concluded that Rowland had written the list. Rowland's fingerprints were also found on the paper the list was written on. Rowland's defense team did not call any witnesses. A major aspect of their defense was the fact that while Samantha's DNA had been found in locations and on items tied to Rowland and on his body, Rowland's DNA had not been found on Samantha's body, even though she tried to fight off her killer. Rowland had been wearing long sleeves the night of the murder, and scratches were found on his jacket. Just prior to resting their case, the defense requested that all of the charges against Rowland be thrown out, arguing that the prosecution's case was entirely circumstantial and mainly tied Samantha to Rowland's vehicle rather than the man himself. Circuit Judge Clifton Newman rejected the request, stating that the prosecution did present more direct evidence, and that the jury should have the opportunity to consider the extensive amount of evidence, both direct and circumstantial, that had been presented. On July 27, 2021, after just an hour of deliberation, a jury found Rowland guilty of kidnapping, murder, and possessing a weapon during a violent crime in Samantha's case. After the verdict was read and before the sentencing, Samantha's loved ones were able to address the court about the pain her loss had caused them.
Words cannot express the anguish our family and friends have endured since he kidnapped and brutally murdered Samantha. From the day I found out I was having Sammy, I was in love with her. As a mother, you worry and pray that your child will be safe, happy, and healthy. When she was sad, I was sad. When she was happy, so was I. Her dreams were my dream, and her death was my death. I close my eyes and I feel what she endured at his hands 120 times. Over and over and over, fighting for her life, locked in his car. I used to have dreams for her. Now will I have her nightmares 120 times.
Rowland's mother also addressed the court, but was interrupted by the judge as she took the opportunity to claim her son was innocent. Judge Newman reminded her that the jury had already found her son guilty, and she was not speaking as a witness. If she had any evidence that would have supported her son's innocence, she should have testified to it during the trial. As he stood before Judge Newman for his sentencing, Rowland again claimed to be innocent of the crimes he had just been found guilty of. Judge Newman was not as moved by Rowland's word as he was by what he described as the avalanche of evidence against him.
The evidence is so substantial in this case, pointing to your guilt. And I emphasize that and re-emphasize it because of the horrific and most brutal nature of this crime. It could not be worse. It's the most severe murder that has occurred that I have been a witness to as far as presiding in court or participating in as a lawyer. And for whomever asked me for leniency, that's not part of my DNA. And sentencing in this case is not difficult. The sentence in this case is easy, though painful it may be. The sentence of the court for murder is that you be committed to the State Department of Corrections for life. Any other sentence that can be imposed will be concurrent with life. Since you only have one life, that sentence must be served for the remaining days of your natural life.
Rowland is currently serving his life sentence at Kirkland Correctional Institution. While the Josephson family was grateful Rowland would not have the opportunity to hurt anyone else, his conviction did not remove the pain they had felt since Samantha was murdered. I will always love you, think about you, worry about you, and I will always hear your voice inside my head saying, Dad, Seymour Josephson said at his daughter's funeral. You had so much more to do. You will not be forgotten. You could never be. We will never forget your name. Samantha Josephson, Samantha Josephson. Samantha's name would continue to live on through the advocacy of her family, as well as through legislation passed in response to her murder. Samantha's parents, Marcy and Seymour Josephson, established the What's My Name Foundation to honor their daughter's memory by providing education about ride-sharing safety. The name of the foundation comes from one of the major safety tips it advocates: passengers asking the driver of a vehicle to tell them the passenger's name before getting into their vehicle, to ensure they are in fact the ride they ordered. The Josephsons hope this simple action will become as instinctual as putting on a seatbelt amongst rideshare passengers. The Josephsons have also called for more accountability in the ride-sharing industry and advocated for the widespread use of already available technology to make ride-sharing more safe by having drivers place barcodes on their windows for passengers to scan to confirm they have found their correct ride before getting into a vehicle. Shortly after Samantha's murder, Uber announced a new initiative to use push notifications to remind users to check the make, model, and license plate of a vehicle, as well as the name and photograph of the driver before getting into a vehicle. The initiative was initially rolled out in Columbia, South Carolina, as part of a larger campus safety initiative in partnership with the University of South Carolina. Lyft also announced plans to conduct checks on their drivers daily, in addition to their already mandated annual background check. Several pieces of legislation named in honor of Samantha, designed to increase rideshare safety, have passed since her death. South Carolina's Samantha L. Josephson Ridesharing Safety Act was written shortly after Samantha was killed, and it quickly made its way through the state legislature. It was signed by Governor Henry McMaster on May 16, 2019, and went into effect that June, less than 3 months after Samantha's death. The act makes impersonating a rideshare driver a crime and requires rideshare vehicles to prominently display their license plate number on the front of their vehicle so that passengers do not have to walk behind the vehicle to check the plate number. On June 20, 2019, Governor Phil Murphy of Samantha's home state of New Jersey signed Sammy's Law, named in honor of Samantha. The law requires rideshare services to issue illuminated or reflective signs to their drivers, who must display one sign in their windshield and one in their back window. Vehicles must also have scannable QR or barcodes, as well as placards identifying the vehicle's driver. In October of 2019, Congressman Christopher Smith of New Jersey filed a federal version of Sammy's Law. The law would set up a digital system allowing rideshare passengers to verify a vehicle as their ride before entering it. In addition, it would also establish a 17-member board called Sammy's Council, which would report to the Secretary of Transportation to advance safety standards in the rideshare industry. It would also make it illegal to purchase or sell ride-sharing signage, and require reports on the incidents of assaults on rideshare drivers and passengers, and on the background checks that drivers undergo, to be generated. The law passed in the House of Representatives and arrived in the Senate in July of 2020, where it did not receive a vote. Sammy's Law was refiled in February of 2021. As Samantha's legacy makes an increasing impact on rideshare safety, her family does not want the memory of Samantha herself to be lost amongst all of the work being done in her name. We just want you to know that she is a fabulous young woman, Samantha's mother Marcy said of her in April of 2019. Kind, a best friend to everyone, really determined, a hard worker, and a fun young woman.